It's Power Hour LSU.
Man, I'm headed to the field. Terror of the tiger, I'ma always keep it real. Everything gon' get devoured, it's the power. LSU with Carter, it's the power. LSU with Carter, man, I'm headed to the field. Terror of the tiger, I'ma always keep it real. Everything gon' get devoured, it's the power. LSU with Carter, it's the power. LSU with Carter, man, I'm headed to the field. Terror of the tiger, I'ma always keep it real. Everything gon' get devoured, it's the power. LSU with Carter, it's the power. LSU with Carter, man, I'm headed to the field. Terror of the tiger, I'ma always keep it real. Everything gon' get devoured, it's the power. LSU with Carter, it's the power. LSU with Carter.
Let's freaking go. The legendary Jacques Doucet will join us a little bit later in the show tonight. Really excited about that. You see the thumbnail image. It is actually Jacques' headshot. Really pumped up. I've always been a fan of WAFB, but he'll join us coming up here in roughly 30 minutes. I want to start with a schedule analysis for next season, right? Because there's so much that will be decided from now until LSU actually takes the field in 2026. So the first thing, and I feel like it's important to parse this out, that the 9-game conference schedule, not only to me, wasn't really optional, it was something that you should be excited about as a college football fan. I do think we tend to look at all the other conferences way too much. Look, I understand. I'm just like a lot of you. I always think Penn State is overrated. James Franklin never wins a big game. They had a far easier first 3 weeks than any of the elite teams currently ranked in the top 10 in all of college football. There's always an argument to be made about all the other conferences. And we all know that the SEC is the best conference. With that said, you as a fan should be excited that you get more of the best conference. If you are of the belief in the SEC's motto that things do indeed just mean more, then if that is your way of looking at the Southeastern Conference, you're getting more games. Now, is more always equal to better? No. I was anti-playoff expansion. I am anti-season expansion. I think there's a lot of different things college football can do. Elia Drinkowitz was talking about a preseason NFL game, which I think is pretty dumb. But you as a fan of the SEC also need to understand that with the 9-game conference schedule, you're also going to get a bigger playoff. The SEC would not have just willingly agreed to extra games if they were either A, not given more money, which they could have. I don't have it in stone that the SEC got more money, but I would like to think that they did. Or they wouldn't get more preferential playoff treatment, which had already been in the works over the past couple of months anyway. And then on top of all of that, you're starting to see it now from Ross Dellinger and all these great reporters. Hey, the college football playoff is expanding to 20-plus teams, which would be a travesty to the sport. But you would probably see some concessions made as well. You would probably see the bowl system change dramatically. You would obviously see the SEC championship game would probably go away. The conference championship games would probably go away, or they would be heavily modified to potentially a play-in game or whatever. But the truth is, you should be really excited about the future of this conference. I am gung-ho on the future of this conference. I have been more critical than most of the future of the Southeastern Conference. So, for me, be really excited. You're a fan of LSU, one of the more successful teams in this conference. And then at the same time, don't fear. Don't fear the future. Embrace it. One thing I'll say about Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers is that they are in a really interesting spot in that they wanted this. There wasn't a more vocal proponent of a 9-game conference schedule than Brian Kelly and Scott Woodward. Now, were they always like that behind the scenes? That's impossible for me to know. But I do like the fact that they were fearless. And I've said it plenty of times. This will be the only curse word I'll say tonight. They weren't a bunch of bitches. They never have been, really. Brian Kelly has been mostly a, hey, we need to go out there, get the job done kind of coach. Brian Kelly has not put blame on others for some of LSU's lack of successes. And at the same time, he was like, hey, bring it on. They had been this way since at least 2022, since Brian Kelly has been there. Bring on the extra conference game. So there you go. We say hi to Drew. We say hi to Tony. We say hi to Jamie. And we also say hi to the actual schedule itself. Texas A&M, Arkansas, Ole Miss, those are your permanents. Yeah, does it kind of stink that you have to go to Ole Miss in back-to-back years? Yes. But there was always going to be change. And the concession to that would be you're getting Texas A&M at home in back-to-back seasons. And you also get to keep Arkansas, one of the weaker teams in the Southeastern Conference, on your schedule every year. Then a pretty prominent LSU source called me today, already getting things ready for the Alabama game at home next year. There's also a big Texas source that's always in our chat. Mr. Sibley also called me today, and he's really excited about the Texas game. We never got that Texas return trip back in 2020 after Joe Burrow did what he did in 2019, which, by the way, in our Lane Kiffin film study from earlier, we did include some 2019 LSU plays that Lane Kiffin also currently runs with this current iteration of the Ole Miss Rebels. And then you have Mississippi State, and then you have at Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So the big thing is that schedule flips in 2027, where you'll get Missouri, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, at Florida, at Georgia, at South Carolina. 2027 is going to be brutal. It's important to point out that in 2026, you also get Clemson. But no matter what you want to think about the 2027 schedule, in 2026, you do need to add one extra team to the schedule, a non-conference team. So we'll see what happens there. But I am really excited about the future of this conference. Now, Skipper brings up an interesting question. Does that mean Arkansas will be our after Thanksgiving game? Yes. More than likely, yes. And right now, that's currently Oklahoma. And yes, that will probably be the case, as that is normally rivalry weekend. Arkansas doesn't have a rivalry weekend game outside of the Missouri game. So if Arkansas-Missouri remains a thing, that could be that rivalry weekend game. So it's impossible to know, but at this juncture, I would say LSU-Arkansas would be that weekend's game. I don't know exactly how they're going to do that, though. So there you go. Now, I want to move on to a very interesting story earlier today from CBS Sports, a really good reporter by the name of Richard Johnson of CBS. He and Chris Hummer had a report earlier today about star quarterback Trinidad Chamblas. I keep calling him Trinity Chamblas because I know a lot of Trinities. Trinidad Chamblas is one of the best names I've ever heard, first off. To be named after such a fun country, that's so cool. I don't know the origins of Trinidad Chamblas's name, but this was very interesting. I did not know this about him, that he was dead set on going to Temple to be an owl who Just a few weeks ago, they played Oklahoma, and he was going there to be the starter. And Trinidad Chamblas had been a very successful quarterback at Ferris State, which I believe is in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. He's won a national championship at Ferris State. This is a winner. This is a competitor. And his private quarterback coach told him, hey, I think it's time for you to test yourself, to leave Ferris State and move up a level. So the private quarterback coach then started shopping him around, along obviously with Chamblas and maybe a few agents. And guess what? Temple was ready to give him $300,000 to come be their starter. Now, think about Temple. Temple does not have the resources that an SEC school would have. And this is a starting quarterback role with the offense being built all around them. As we say hi to Anthony, Antonio. What's up, Gary? Good to see you. Skipper, Jamie, 904 Drew, Tony. So the whole offense would have been built around Trinidad Chamblas at Temple. And him getting $300,000 from Temple would have guaranteed him a starter's role. But what happened? Ole Miss came in. There was a bunch of other schools, including Ohio State, that was interested in his services. And he ended up going to Ole Miss. And what did Ole Miss pay him? $500,000, according to the report. So there's a couple of things about this. The first is he chose the money and the murkier picture than going to Temple, where he would have been guaranteed to be the starter. This kid is a competitor. And we probably don't know what we would have done in that situation. I think most of us would have taken the money and going to play at Ole Miss, because he decided to challenge himself to beat out Austin Simmons. Also included in the piece is that $500,000 is what you normally get as a Division I Power 4 backup. So you'd also like to think that Michael Van Buren is probably making that amount of money for LSU. But the big thing is, in this matchup this weekend, we are going up against a dog. Trinidad Chamblas really impressed me when I sat down and watched him. I do think he's been far better than Austin Simmons in his 2 games compared to Simmons' 2 games. I also think he's not played a defense as good as ours. So the truth is, 2 things could be true at once. Ole Miss has not played a defense as good as ours, and our defense has not played an offense as good as Ole Miss's. Both have been semi-challenged up to this point. So, another thing is that the sport of college football is different than all the other sports because the haves and the have-nots are so different. It's so wide. $300,000 is a lot of money for anyone to play a sport. There are some secondary NBA players who make that per game. That is a lot of money. And he turned that down to be a backup for $500K. And then there's another thing. Lane Kiffin is a special football coach. He is a special football coach. Not good, not great. He is a special football coach. Now you have to deal with a lot with him. A whole hell of a lot. You have to deal with some of the political tweets. You have to deal with some of the jokes. You have to deal with the extracurriculars. You have to deal with it. It's who he is. He can be cringe. But there are 2 things you cannot deny about Lane Kiffin. Number one, His football acumen is through the roof. For everyone that's watched the film study, I spent a full day putting together a preview film study. I am that passionate about Lane Kiffin's offense. And in that film study, I only broke down 2 of his plays and the genesis of those plays, one of which is called Spear, which actually was popularized by Joe Brady and the 2019 LSU Tigers and the Drew Brees New Orleans Saints. I spent a lot of time on it. I hyped it up last night. I've already gotten a few texts that it lived up to expectations. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and check that out. He is so good at adapting his playbook to who his players actually are. And another thing is, yes, for Trinidad Chamblas, the money was something. But take a look at what Lane Kiffin has done recruiting-wise. You saw that transfer portal class he put together last year. Lane's biggest coaching tarnishment, is that even a word? I've been feeling weird all day. His biggest spot in his resume will always be last year. That is one of the best SEC teams that will never make the playoff, was last year's Ole Miss team, and we beat them. We beat them. There is a big problem with Lane Kiffin, is that he can't get out of his own way. He can't. And as much as I would like to think of what our program would look like if Lane Kiffin was our coach instead of Brian Kelly, because I'm going to be honest, Lane Kiffin was number 2 on my coaching hot list a few years ago. I had not even considered Brian Kelly because I thought that was never going to be a possibility. As much as I like Lane, I'm happy with the BK. And I get asked a lot because I was very vocal about LSU going after Lane Kiffin. There's just a lot here, and I don't know how he would have done as a head coach at a bigger school. I think Ole Miss fits him wonderfully. If any of you have friends in the Ole Miss atmosphere, I do. There are at least 10,000 middle-aged men who live in the Oxford area that look like Lane Kiffin, talk like Lane Kiffin, act like Lane Kiffin. He is a perfect fit for that program. And to me, the biggest compliment I can give him is the belief that he has in his players, how good he is at recruiting, in particular quarterbacks who know they're walking into a quarterback room with a very murky picture. Now, of course, money plays a role in this. Chamblas probably wouldn't have gone to Ole Miss if they offered equal amounts of money. But he still went to a quarterback room with no eligibility left really at all in a situation where he doesn't know if he's going to play. He did the same thing to Walker Howard with Jackson Dart. He did the same thing with Spencer Sanders. So going into this weekend, understand that we're going to be making a gazillion Lane Kiffin jokes. But he is the real deal as a head coach. Real deal. Now, his name is going to be heavily connected to the Florida opening if it does open. Florida Gator fans are already starting to push this narrative. I don't think I would ever leave Ole Miss if I was Lane. You're already making ridiculous amounts of money. And Ole Miss is going to have you as long as you want to be there. And Lane is a lot like Dabo Swinney in that the Clemson program is Dabo. Dabo is what got Clemson on the map. The Ole Miss Rebels program is Lane Kiffin. He is a program. So why would he ever leave that? So I'm going to enjoy this Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin matchup. This might be the last time that these two go head-to-head with their current schools. But I do know this. Brian Kelly will be our coach next year. I don't know where Lane Kiffin's going to be next year. Jason says, please tell me that Trinidad Chamblas has a brother named Tobago. Huh? Jason, not everyone here are successful geography students. Let's go to Pegasus. Yeah, he runs his mouth too much. Way too much. To the point where you're like, why? What's the point? What are you going to get out of it? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Or St. Lucia. Huh? 904 Drew says Lane Kiffin would have done fine at LSU. And by the way, this is not me reporting that he was ever up for the LSU job. That was just my personal opinion of the search of people who I thought were reasonable. But at the time, obviously, I was overjoyed with a college football Hall of Famer taking over LSU. Okay. Now, coming up next, we'll continue our conversation. Don't forget Jacques Doucet coming up pretty soon as well. One very underrated Ole Miss Rebel who honestly took us to the woodshed last year. He is back on this current team, and he could be a problem this year. I'll tell you all about him right after this. PHL Nation, it's time to lock in and get serious really quickly with our friends at Fortified Gulf Coast and FortifiedGulf.com. This is my buddy Ramey. He is one of many Fortified Gulf Coast inspection professionals that are doing something to help you not only save your home, but your memories.
The Fortified program got started about 13 years ago. We adopted it here in New Orleans about 2.5 years ago. It's a more advanced way of doing the roof. It adds an extra layer of protection, whereas even if a hurricane was to pull the shingles off this roof, water will still not get into the house.
So yes, your establishment is important, but what about the things you can't replace? That family scrapbook or that painting that's been handed down from Meemaw to Papaw and to you. It is important to protect that today with Fortified Roofing. And while this seems like a priceless asset, did you know it can actually save you on your homeowner's insurance up to 37% if you are in South Louisiana? Just call the number 504-444-7563. That's 504-444-7563, or visit fortifiedgulf.com. That's FortifiedGulf.com. Let's go. All righty, number 51, defensive tackle for the Ole Miss Rebels. I don't know how to pronounce his first name. Was a force in the game last year. I want you to listen to what Brian Kelly had to say leading into this Ole Miss game. Of course, there have been a few other press conferences. I'm also going to address the big gossipy story that we did a little piece on a little bit earlier today. But I want you to listen closely to what Brian Kelly had to say towards the opening of his press conference on Monday.
This is a game that goes way back, and certainly the last couple of years, it was decided on the last plays of the game. Ole Miss is an outstanding football team, well coached. Lane does a great job, and again, they have an established winning culture, and certainly an offense that has again put up incredible numbers offensively, and they do it with two quarterbacks now, which is very difficult to do, but they've managed it quite well. With Simmons and Chamblas. Both of them have been extremely effective and efficient through their first couple of games, throwing and running. So you've got a dual threat situation. I think Lacey is one of the best backs in the league. Harrison, an outstanding wide receiver. They've got some veteran offensive linemen. And so they're so, obviously efficient at what they do and how they do it. This is what they do. And it's very similar week in and week out. And certainly the balance that they have in running and throwing the football. Defensively, Harris, Daughtery at linebacker, and Perkins at the edge. They've got an inside presence. They've got an outside presence, and they certainly have it at the linebacker who kind of, makes things happen for them. So, again, a great challenge for us, one that we're looking forward to. We got to go on the road. Anytime you go on the road in the SEC, it's a great challenge, and we recognize that going into this week. So, that will open up the questions.
Brian, just to get started, updates on West Weeks, Caden Durham, Gabe Relaford, and Trades Green. What is their status now heading into the week?
West Weeks ran yesterday. I think we got him at 90%, so I would say that he is probable. for this game leading into it. Trinidad will play. He was pretty good in pregame, and then we felt like we could hold him back for another week. Caden Durham will be a day-to-day situation. He was better than we had first thought. Doesn't show the signs of a high ankle, so he's anxious to give it a shot and play. But we'll monitor him, throughout the week. Gabe Relaford has a subluxation of his shoulder, so he is out this week, and then we will determine whether surgery is necessary or he can play with it. We certainly want to respect the fact that in this situation, a defensive lineman, you want to make sure he's healthy and pass rush. And if he can't compete at the level he needs to, then we'll look at the options that are in front of us, and surgery could be an option. I think that covers everybody.
Hey, Coach, the last time you went to Oxford, you scored 49, didn't win the game. I think you referenced that as a low point for you guys defensively. How much better do you feel this time around with this defense going there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about, even the Clemson game, right, Jacques? You feel better about those games because you're taking a defense that can stand up against the environment, going on the road and all those things. And we're a much more cohesive group. The roster's better. The players are better. Those were good, tough kids that played hard for us. But, we're a little short in some areas. So we bring a defense with us. Now we'll have to match, obviously, I don't know about all the points, but we got to score too. Like we talked about last week. I mean, we can't, be scoring a touchdown or 10 points. That's not going to cut it in the SEC. So continue to play at the level that we have defensively, and then bring your offense up to the level that it needs to be to win games in the SEC.
Yeah, so you notice I wanted to hear Brian Kelly so you can hear what he had to say about Gabriel Relaford. I do think for me, as far as the shoulder situation with Gabe, I know Gabe, I don't know him well. His parents are big supporters of our channel. They are going to take this cautious. I will say this. And at the same time, he's not a player that you absolutely need to win this game this weekend. So I do like the cautious approach with Gabriel Relaford. And then at the same time, I am of the belief that LSU will use a few other defensive ends more frequently. You could see Dylan Carpenter. You could see Damian Shanklin. But I also could just see the defensive end rotation just be the three portal guys, which is Jabari Butler, Jack Pyburn, and Patrick Payton, especially this weekend when you have a bye week right around the corner. I do think also when you look at this Ole Miss front and you feel that this defensive front isn't as good as last year's front, that does not mean that they're still not good. And that does not mean you are in a better spot against them because your offensive line is struggling so much. So, as many of you know, I'm a big fan, who we mentioned a minute ago, of Xavier Harris, number 51. He is a Mississippi native. So this program means a lot to him. And so far this season, 11 tackles, 2 sacks. He's been one of the few bright spots. And last year, we had some issues with him. He's still on the team, and he's still good. The next thing I would say is this Ole Miss defense has had some players that have underperformed. 6 for them has had a tough season, and he is a multiple-year starter. His name is T.J. Daugherty. He's good. He is a good off-ball linebacker for the Ole Miss Rebels. So I don't think, for me at least, that LSU has a defense in front of them that's going to push them around. But they can if the offensive line for LSU doesn't step up, which is why I wanted to play that Brian Kelly clip. I don't play a whole lot of BK clips. I do like playing his stuff in our post-game show, but he says our offense needs to step up. We can't just be a 10-point per game offense like we were against Florida. Put up only 13 points against Florida. But then again, Miami, who had the best offense in college football, maybe heading in to the Florida game last weekend, also struggled versus the Florida Gators. And that's with an unhealthy Caleb Banks situation this entire season. Florida's defense has been beyond elite. But eventually, this sport becomes an offensive sport. And I want you just to play a theoretical game just for a second before we go into this Ole Miss game. And it probably explains why LSU is an underdog, even though we're ranked way higher than Ole Miss. We're a top 5 ranking. Knowing what you know now about Clemson and knowing what you know now about Florida, let's just say you were Florida and you were playing the schedule that Florida was playing. Now, of course, Garrett Nussmeier isn't nearly as bad as DJ Lagway has been. But who's to say you would have beaten South Florida? Who's to say you would have beaten Miami? At this point, LSU probably loses to Miami. So that's what Brian Kelly's essentially telling you. Hey, it's great that we're 4-0. We're happy we're 4-0. We're encouraging ourselves with what the LSU offense has done in the direction that they have been under over the past couple of weeks. There's some encouraging signs, some positive signs with this offense, but it needs to be better. It is unacceptable. And at this juncture in the season, what you also have to ask is which LSU offensive players are meeting or exceeding season expectations. Which ones? The answer is 3. 3 of the players that have played on the LSU offense this year are meeting and or exceeding their current expectations right now. And who are those 3 players? Well, Aaron Anderson is one. His numbers are about what they were last year. So I wouldn't say he's exceeding, but he's about where we expected him to be. Xavion Thomas has exceeded season expectations. We've always been really high on Xavion, but for him being arguably the most important player to our offense up to this point in the season is a bit of a shock. And then the other you would probably consider is Tyree Adams. You can also consider Barryon Brown. And then normally there's one wild card offensive player that you would have never thunk had been such a big piece to where you might consider him a starter right now. Juwan Johnson. The answer outside of those 5 players is no one else. So Eric brings up Barra Sharp. Sure. Let's talk about Barra Sharp. He has been amazing these last couple of games. Amazing. But has he been at expectation? Well, I'll tell you this. PFF does not like Barra Sharp. They do not like Barra Sharp for whatever reason. I think a lot of it is because of the blocking. I do think PFF can be brutal on tight ends and be a little too favorable towards quarterbacks. But you go down the list here, Barra Sharp, out of 34 players who have played a snap for LSU this season, Barra Sharp has a 49.6 grade, which is atrocious. And that's about where DJ Chester was last year. So that's why I didn't include Barra Sharp. But like I said, PFF grades tight ends way too hard. Because I do think the position is the second hardest position in football. I do think so. It used to be left tackle or any of the offensive line positions. I think that's changed now for a few reasons. I think it's tight end. I do. Now, Here's Eric. But we already knew he was a subpar blocker coming from Oklahoma, right? I mean, he's at expectations. But that's the thing. I would agree with you, Eric. I honestly would. But I do weigh in PFF. I do. Even though I do feel they're a little harsh at times with their grading towards tight ends. I think they graded Mason Taylor way too low, arguably in all 3 of his seasons. But I also think tight end is way harder. I think playing tight end now is harder than it's ever been. Let's go to Alexander. He says, I wasn't impressed with Barrett Sharp. I thought he killed drives in the Clemson and Florida games. Well, yeah, the Clemson fumble was bad, but I mean, he hustled the guy down and made the tackle. Kind of a random play. I don't think he's ever had ball security issues outside of ironically throwing interceptions at Oklahoma, which, yeah, you know. But yeah, as a blocker, I was very concerned about Barrett Sharp, but he's been okay. I think he's been okay. Like I said, I think the PFF grade is just way too hard. But, you know, you get to this point of the offensive season, there's too many good players where they are falling way below consensus expectation. And Garrett Nussmeier is one of them, even though he was phenomenal versus Southeastern. Phenomenal. Chris Hilton is one. We all know how I feel about Caden Durham. He's one way under expectation. It's amazing when one comment made during the national broadcast can change the opinion of a player. Have there been missed holes by Caden Durham? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I did speak to a former running back who's played at an extremely high level. And he did bring up an interesting point about a star running back pressing. If I know as a running back that my scheme is very inconsistent, I begin to press and guess where the holes will be. And I think that's part of the problem here as well. Okay. Now, we go to the poll question here. Poll question brought to you by our friends at Labor Therapy. Which annual matchup will I miss the most? Or will you miss the most? For me, it's Florida. 55% of you say Alabama. 8% of you say other. For me, it's Florida, and it's not close. But Carter, is there a chance that the idea that having to have a prolific offense is wrong? Could it be that defense still wins championships and that we can still make it all the way riding our defense? You can't make it all the way with this offense. You just can't. You can't. It goes against pretty much every data point over the past decade in the modern college football playoff era. Now, you can make the playoff, sure. Especially if you get some luck. Let's say John Mateer, for some reason, is injured when we play him. Michael Hawkins, our backup quarterback, is terrible. He might be the worst backup in college football, or at least in the SEC. Now, he can run. He can flat out run. He is a special runner, but he's terrible. Blake Baker would eat him alive. Even on the road, he would eat him alive. And I understand I say that with how bad we've been versus mobile quarterbacks, but in that instance, he would absolutely eat Michael Hawkins alive. But I'll tell you this, man. I don't know what it is, but Ty Simpson is playing better. We always do this when it comes to the SEC. Ty Simpson is starting to throw some dots. Now, he's played ULM and a Wisconsin team that's reached a new low. Alexander says 2023 Michigan's offense was pretty bad, but they ran the ball well. No, they weren't. They weren't us. They were not us. They had a quarterback go first round. They had a good running game. They had Roman Wilson. But, yeah, their offense wasn't great. I'm with you on that. They're definitely the worst offense that's won the college football playoff over the past decade. But both their lines are really good. Trinidad Green is going to make a big impact in the red zone this year, says S. Young. Willie, we need him healthy. But so far, Trinidad Green, what is it? 2 catches for 11 yards on the season? Let me get his final numbers for now. Trinidad Green, 2 catches, 17 yards, and a touchdown. Obviously, he's been hurt the last few weeks. It's got a chance this year is 33% done. Yeah, it's almost done. You enjoy it while it's here. I'm telling you right now, the college football playoff is always going to fail you when it comes to entertainment. It's a bunch of blowouts with mismatched teams. This weekend will be my favorite weekend of college football for the entire season, unless LSU gets a playoff game at home, which I think we very well could. We're right in that range of not elite team, but could you see us go 10-2 and host a playoff game? Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Alexander. He says, not going to lie, there is not a world where Barry Sharp should have more targets than Trinidad Green. Well, one has played 4 games. The other has played 2. And who is the better fit for what our offense actually is? It's probably Barry Sharp. It's probably Barry Sharp as a more traditional all-around tight end. I also think Barry Sharp and Donovan Green are closer in play styles than Trinidad Green is to him. So I saw this earlier today, and this was interesting. There is a viral tweet, and this will become, once he retires, the LeBron versus Jordan debate between Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski, who is the best tight end ever. And those two have separated themselves from everyone else in the minds of many. I do think George Kittle is a little bit closer to those guys. I could make a case that Kittle is better than both of them. But that's going to be the debate. Is Rob Gronkowski better than Travis Kelce? And the answer is, it's impossible to compare the two. Travis Kelce is a slot wide receiver. Rob Gronkowski is an actual tight end. And if you watch both of them enough, which I have, you would noticeably know the difference. If you ever think about society, branding is everything. Branding is everything. How you name things is everything. But when you break it down, especially in football, players are different. Play styles are different. What you're asked to do is different. I think it's even crazy. Like, there's these debates about how great is Josh Allen in like the whole echelon of quarterbacking. Well, comparing Josh Allen to Drew Brees is stupid. Like they play the game totally different. Take Monday Night Football earlier this week. You had Lamar Jackson, who is way better than Jared Goff. But Jared Goff is also very good. They are both exciting as you know what. They're completely different play styles, completely different. So it's kind of the same thing here with Sharp and Trinidad Green. If Trinidad Green was in a Sean Payton offense, then Trinidad Green would have way more targets than Barry Sharp. Way more targets. But if our offense is a bit dysfunctional, which it is right now, it's tough to really get anyone going offensively. Okay. Now, let's talk about Blake, the I formation stuff. There are times I get info as far as what we might do in upcoming games. Okay. So, for instance, there was a pretty prominent thing that happened in a recent LSU game that I got tipped off, and I wasn't going to share it because I don't want to be the guy that everyone comes to and says, oh, Carter was leaking our schemes. I already get that enough from my film studies. I got it earlier today. Carter, Lane Kiffin's watching your stuff, and he's going to, no, Lane's not worried about me. He doesn't even know I exist, more than likely. But the truth is, yeah, there are times when I hear that this guy's going to do this or whatever. Could we see more I formation stuff? The answer is, why haven't we tried it? Your offense is so abysmal right now. Try it. Try it. And look, I don't want to get into like a journalism debate or anything like that, or what info should be out or not. When I get schematic info, I try not to share it. I just share what's been done. Okay. Now, what I would also tell you is, could we see some Jack Pyburn at fullback in this game? It's already on tape. We could use a spark. I'm very public in saying Jack should be playing offense. Sure, yeah. But I've got no info from this game in particular that we're going to play more I formation. Tyler, what's good? Brock, what's good? Are we going to dial up some power runs this weekend? Well, what type of power runs? Are you saying the power I formation, where it is what we were in when we had the big run at the end of the Florida game? It would be nice to see it, because part of the reason why that run popped off is that Florida didn't line up correctly versus it. And guess what? Ole Miss, the big runs they have given up, a few have been because they have not lined up properly. This was passed around as well. Cold at ya. Eric says, oh, Eric's got sources. He talks to BK all the time. That's good. I will also tell you, my analytics guy sent me an overall chart of what's worked for the LSU offense and what's not worked. We'll go into those numbers for tomorrow night's live stream at 6. But this was getting passed around quite a bit. And one of my Arkansas booster friends was like, hey, should Arkansas just go full portal? So the CFB liaison said the top 7 transfer portal classes in college football are 27-0 this season. LSU, Texas Tech, Miami, Ole Miss, Oregon, Florida State, and Missouri. One other thing that I would add to this is that this 27-0 record is also 21-6 against the number, which is even more impressive than 27-0. So against the spread, a team full of transfers, 21-6 against the number, which is crazy. And one of those covers was this weekend with Southeastern versus LSU, where LSU called off the dogs. And I bet Southeastern, by the way. So what does that mean? What should this tell LSU moving forward? Well, for one, is that last year Brian Kelly was talking about developing high school players. We're going to build our program through high school, and you still should do that some. But what were we saying here on Power Hour LSU? I'm not saying I know more than Brian Kelly. I was just saying, I don't know if the players that we were playing as much as we did could be developed into something. Also with college football, still with a bunch of COVID era guys, there are just vast amounts of age differences between some of the haves and have-nots players that are playing for us right now. Take two players of similar build that are both playing a fair amount of football right now for LSU. One's playing at an extremely high level, and another is playing a lot, and he's done pretty fine in his limited snaps. One of these players is Bernard Gooden. The other is Walter Mathis. Bernard Gooden is in his 5th year of college football. Walter Mathis is a true freshman. We don't do a good enough job of calibrating for how difficult it is to play the sport as a true freshman. But yes, I am a very portal heavy guy. I am pro building your team out of the transfer portal. Now, for you to do that, you got to have money. You got to have a vision. You also have to have a bunch of off-field liaisons, off-field roster-building experts. So, yeah, I had a 30-minute call today with a big supporter of the SEC channel who's an Arkansas booster. And he said, hey, how did LSU get all these guys out of the portal? And I said, well, number one, the Bryce Underwood thing happened. And then number two, we had a vision. We had guys behind the scenes who worked their ass off, worked the phones off, put together boards, if you will, for who we should go after. To the point where Lane Kiffin said in his press conference publicly this week, LSU killed it. They got the 30 best defensive backs out of the portal. And if anyone knows how important that is, ask Lane Kiffin, who got, to me, the best collection of defensive talent we have seen in the portal era. So you take two of those teams that were undefeated, LSU and Texas Tech, they did the same damn thing. So what does that mean exactly? Well, for one thing about going into the portal is that you're getting players that have played, that they are more proven. The second thing is they're older. They're always going to be older. Some guys could be year 2 guys, but that's rare. You get a Caleb Downs or someone like that as a year 2 transfer. That's like a bona fide starter. But the truth is, portal guys know what the hell they're doing. They do. Could you imagine our team without AJ Halsey? Could you imagine? We wouldn't be that good of a team if we did not have AJ Halsey, Tamarcus Cooley, and Mansour Delane. You take just 2 of those 3 away from us, we're probably losing one of these games between Florida and Clemson. Or if not, it's even closer than what those scores were. Let's take a few more. I don't know if Jacques coming. I sent him a message again. He agreed to come. By the way, I've been a little sick today. I don't know what it was. Hopefully I've sounded okay. I stayed up until 2 a.m. to finish a film study from earlier. Let's go to Pegasus. Carter, with the increase in more front office staff for GMs to support staff for recruiting and transfers, how important is it to get a coach who can recruit anymore? Oh, Pegasus. See, I think you and I have gone back and forth on this, and we were actually in agreement, but the different levels of this. I think you remember this was a live stream like 2 years ago where we brought up how development and recruiting is just overrated in the modern era. It's very overrated. Here's a good example of this, okay? And I still like this guy. He's got people close to him that still do watch this channel. And his name is Bo Davis. So we had forever just tried to find that masterful defensive tackle coach. And we got the one who's been the best in college football, which is Bo Davis. And number one, our defensive tackles weren't that good last year. Number two, we were paying him $1.25 million just to coach defensive tackles. And then number three, it's a small sample size, but we go get Kyle Williams, who's probably, based on his resume as a coach, underqualified for this big of a job, but he's crushed it. And I don't think it's really a shock that he's crushed it going from high school to college, because he's an NFL grade. He's arguably in the Mount Rushmore of all-time LSU defensive tackles. And we're not paying him near as much as we're paying Bo Davis. So while Bo Davis is probably a better defensive tackles coach, he's put all these guys into the draft. How much of a difference has it been? I mean, once again, small sample. Hopefully Kyle Williams stays for an extra year. That would be the biggest win if we can just have one stay for more than just one season. But I would heavily consider sending that money to your front office and let them go get players. I'm serious. This was something else brought up to me by the Arkansas booster earlier today, that, so just to give you a little behind the scenes, I was going to end on this. I'm still waiting to see if Jack's going to come on here. I want to share with you how much it matters that your athletic director at LSU cares. It matters a lot. Okay, so Scott Woodward actually cares about you. He cares about this job. He's from Baton Rouge. You literally hit the jackpot. You did. He hired Jay Johnson, hired Kim Mulkey. It's actually a Baton Rouge kid doing this. He actually had big-time AD experience before he ever came to LSU. You got very lucky. Okay? I have never spoken to Scott Woodward in my life. Okay? Like, half of an AD's job is just caring, because it is such a tough job. There are ADs in the SEC, now think about this, in the Southeastern Conference, who don't care. They're always trying to find that other job. We have seen some of the weirdest AD, and for those that don't know, AD stands for athletic director. We have seen some weird movement in athletic director circles. And I'm not saying that Scott Woodward wouldn't leave LSU if he was given a ridiculous amount of money, which I could see that one day potentially happening. It would need to be something crazy. But, this is probably Scott's dream job. But there are ADs who don't care. There are ADs who will gloss over big 6 to 7 figure sponsorship deals, which was told to me earlier today at a certain SEC school. It's crazy. It's crazy. ADs are always looking for that next job. I don't think that's happening here, but I'm so glad Scott Woodward is fully locked in with the LSU Tigers. What do I think Mike Gundy will do next? Is he washed up? I don't know. I really don't know. One thing, and it's not my forte, but could he go into politics like a lot of football coaches do? A lot of big P4 coaches do. Yeah, I could see him do it. Could he take another coaching job? I don't know if he's going to want to do that. Would he want to go be an analyst somewhere? Yes. I could see him getting paid a lot of money by ESPN or Barstool or something like that to do a podcast with John Gruden or something like that. And he would be pretty damn good. Now, you guys know how much I freaking love Mike Gundy. Oh my God, I freaking love this guy. He was as good as it gets when it comes to coaching. What he did was nothing short of incredible at Oklahoma State. But I was in a random Walmart parking lot, and I saw someone with Oklahoma State gear. I think I was in Monroe or something like that. I don't remember exactly where it was. And he played wide receiver. I don't even remember his name. But he had on a bunch of like bowl gear from Oklahoma State, and I saw him. And I was like, give me your honest thoughts on playing for Coach Gundy. He said, I loved him, but he should have retired after last year. And this was a conversation I had 2 years ago. Hand on the good book. I was like, he's cooked. And, well, we are here where we are now, where they went 3-9 last year. By far his best players having a ridiculously good rookie year with the Dolphins. And they're 1-2 with a bad loss versus Tulsa. He is as good as it gets. If he were available, if he were to say, now I want this to also be clear. This is not what I'm suggesting Brian Kelly do, but I would bring him in as an analyst right now. I'm serious. Like I would seriously consider doing that. So this was a pretty interesting revelation that was brought up by a Tennessee writer. Take this for what it's worth. It's an actual journalist, and it was confirmed. I think it was the Knoxville News Sentinel who broke the story. That Josh Heupel, who has exceeded all expectations at Tennessee, he's gone to a playoff. He hired Jim Chaney, who has been fired multiple times as an offensive coordinator, as an analyst. And guess what? As someone who does Tennessee film studies regularly, the offenses look different. It's not just the quarterback play. There's been some modifications to what they've done. So what did Josh Heupel do? He said, look, I don't have this thing figured out. So they went and got Jim Chaney, and he works remotely as an analyst. I don't think LSU has enough play calling chops in their staff right now. You have got to have people with play calling experience on your staff. This is Tiger Stadium behind me, Gunner. But yes, it was Jacques Doucet. So we're about to end it. I waited for forever for him to hop on. I talked to him literally at 4, so something might have popped up breaking news wise. And it's interesting because he tweeted this out earlier today, and I don't think this was meant to be a shot at Matt McMahon. I don't. But this was a close-up shot of Matt McMahon's opening press conference, and this was a media room. As you can see, it's empty. That might be Bruni in the top right corner, who's so sharp when it comes to basketball. Kent Lowe's in there. And there's a few other media members who I don't recognize. And some took this as a shot. I don't think it was a shot. Jacques takes photos of every press conference he goes to. So Here's my message to Matt McMahon. All I need you to do is make the tournament. LSU can't be good in every single sport. It's hard to be elite in every single sport. It's hard. We're the premier baseball program. Nobody's close. We are a top 10 women's basketball program. No worse than top 10. We are top 10 football program. I just want to make the tournament. If we don't make the tournament, I will go absolutely berserk on this channel. I have gone to too many Dale Brown basketball camps, too many John Brady basketball camps. I've gone through too many great players. Tasman Mitchell, Marcus Thornton, who's ironically with LSU now. Brad Bridgewater, shout out New Roads, Louisiana. We've got to make the tournament in men's basketball. We got to. Got to. This is not a basketball channel, but it will be when the season gets going. That's all I ask. Make the damn tournament. Okay? A few more things with the LSU Ole Miss game, and then we'll wrap things up. Let's Power Hour Network listeners and viewers. You might be consuming this content with that crick in your back that you've been trying to get rid of for so long. Take this as your sign today to book your appointment with LabourdTherapy.com. In the Lafayette region, there is no one that you will find that cares more about any different type of pain that you might have than the team at LabourdTherapy.com. Book today. Once again, that's LABORDE therapy.com, or you can visit one of their 5 locations all throughout the Lafayette region. All right, a few more. Everybody, welcome Nick Curry to the membership program. Nick, thank you so much for being a member. All you got to do is click the link down below. You get bonus film studies. You get early releases like this film study from earlier today. I might have missed it, but do you think our O-line has enough talent and brains to succeed, or do we make too many dumb mistakes to improve this year? Yeah, I just think it's not going to get fixed. If you were to ask me right now, can we get this offensive line to not be a bottom 3 SEC offensive line? Can we get it to where it's not that? I am not sure. It would be shocking, though, if we would get out of the bottom 5. That's how bad it's been. It's really been that bad. And the funny thing about it is, like, I defended Brad Davis last year because I really do believe this, that yes, the unit, there were some players who didn't play as well as we would have liked, Emory Jones being one of them, but he was still fine. I think if you put Braylon Moore on last year's offensive line, that unit is good. That's how much I think DJ Chester held that unit back. And now the inverse happened, where your center is playing way better than everyone else on that front. Tyree Adams has been fine. He's been good enough to be an SEC starter. But the other 3 positions have been, ugh. Now, thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. What about the pure talent part? And that's a problem. There's film study analysts that I have on here that know more ball than me. I like to think of myself as a good film study analyst, but, you know, I'm not elite when it comes to actual ball knowledge. I think I'm elite at making a video, which is a different thing. But yeah, there's people out there that like no ball. And they've given up on this unit. They've given up on them. It's just try to make sure you don't lose more than 2 games and get into the playoff. I'm telling you right now, if Brian Kelly were to win the national championship with this unit, with this team, this would be one of the most impressive coaching jobs in the history of the sport. And it would be by far the most impressive national championship from a coach's perspective that we have ever had. And I don't think that's a close second. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that obviously this team isn't as good as that team that everyone talks about 6 years ago. This team's not as good as 2011. This team isn't as good as 2007. This team isn't as good as 2003. But are we 2016 good? We're probably a better team than 2016. We're probably as good as 05 LSU, or I would say that this team is better than 2012 LSU, which was a really good team. But, if you watch the games and you don't just pay attention to the loss column, you would know that offensively we've had some major issues. And Nick, because you are a new member, I'll get into this briefly. It is an issue with a Brian Kelly coach team that we have had factions of the game of football that reaches new lows. And this has happened now for the 3rd time in 4 seasons. In 2022, we had an all-time bad special teams unit. Then in 2023, we had one of the best offenses to ever walk on a college football field. And we matched that with the worst defense in LSU history. Then, of course, and you can argue 2021 or whatever, or 2020 would be a better argument, but still. And then you get to last season, we were good in every department, but we weren't great. We were bad at stopping the run, and last year's team just did not have the talent of this year's team. And now we have, to me, and I don't think it's a debate, it's 4 games in, it could change. This is the worst LSU offensive line in the modern era by a long shot. By a long shot. But it can change. Now, 2021's unit was tough. But then again, the quarterback situation was different. I didn't want to talk trash about Max Johnson or TJ Finley, but they're still playing college football. That's an indication. That is true, Eric. Okay. Let's go to the Whit Week story. And Nick, thank you for joining the membership program. Let's go to the Whit Week story. Is it really important that Whit Weeks is dating Lane Kiffin's daughter? Lane was asked about it today. He said, Whit's a great guy. It has no effect on the game. I will say that there are some that are worried about reconnaissance and all of that. If you knew how much current athletes talk to other current athletes, you would be shocked. But they do talk to players on other teams all the time. Some are high school teammates. Some are 7-on-7 teammates. They camp together. But secrets are rarely shared as far as like playbook secrets. And someone made a Connor Stallions joke a little bit earlier. I don't remember who it was. But on top of that, what was very fascinating was LSU. I'd say LSU. There's only been one blatant situation that I could point to where it was leaked that a player shared the playbook with an opposing team's quarterback. But they weren't friends. It was random. A kid lost his starting job, and he gave the playbook or some of their plays to an opposing team's quarterback. And that's the only instance. Now, could this happen more? Yeah. But most of these kids have integrity of the game of football. They do. Most. Nick says, I believe we have the physical talent, just not the cerebral players on the offensive line. I think it's a little bit of both. No, she does not go to LSU. At least I don't think so. And I think they had been together way before. You know, it was a secret for forever that Will Campbell and Garrett Nussmeier. Will, of course, is dating Garrett Nussmeier's sister. I've known that for a very long time. Didn't bring it up because I just didn't think it was relevant. I'm obviously happy for everyone dating other people. The only reason I use Witt and Landry Kiffin's relationship for a video earlier today is that it was interesting that they announced this the week of the game. And Lane Kiffin responded to it. So I was like, okay, it's out there in the public enough. But yeah, it's interesting how many intermingling there is. I know of many of instances of famous LSU football players or just college football players that date other women that other college football players have dated. And it's amazing. Samuel. There's been a gazillion jokes. That's funny. I don't think Lane would find that funny. I will also say this, and this would be a message I would give Brian Kelly. Don't be the LSU fan that says, well, Lane Kiffin should be punished referencing sports betting when it was clearly a joke. With that said, if let's just say LSU or Arkansas or Tennessee or any of these teams I do a gazillion film studies on were to call me and say, hey, Carter, we're offering you a job to come work for our schools. It's a dream. I want to work for a college football program. Obviously, I would take way less to be at LSU than any other program. But if they were to call me and I would accept, the first thing I would do is delete every sports betting app on my phone. I don't want anything to do with sports betting. As much as I love it, it would be difficult. So I'd have to delete the app that's a partner with our channel, Fast Draft. I would have to delete Underdog. I would have to delete DraftKings, FanDuel, Saracen, all these different apps. I don't want anything close to my name associated with sports betting. Like even LeBron James doing sponsorships for DraftKings. I wouldn't want to touch it if I'm an athlete. Because the punishments for that are so severe. So yeah, it was funny from a Lane Kiffin perspective. He made the joke twice, which I thought was interesting. Also want to address this to Ole Miss fans. I did share the stat that, and this was a stat that we found from teamrankings.com, that Lane Kiffin's teams hit the under more than any other team in the SEC. That is not an Ole Miss thing. That wasn't a shot at Ole Miss's offense. I'm just saying that they don't hit the total, the games that they play. A lot of that is their defense has been a lot better than people give them credit for. Yeah, so I'm guessing this is the same daughter that dated Walker Howard. I don't know. Is it strange? Yeah, it's strange. West Weeks is probable for this weekend. Okay, that's good. All right, before we go, once again, I apologize. Don't know why Jacques didn't come on today. I was really excited. He was a thumbnail, so I gotta go recut a thumbnail. And we would have already been off at 7, but I was gonna wait. Sometimes our guests do take a bet. This is true also by Nick. And by the way, when I said that Trinidad only had 2 catches for 17 yards, also included that he was hurt. But you're right. He has drawn a few pass interference flags, and there actually should have been more. He was pulled down on a Clemson target on a slot fade. So you're right. I wasn't belittling Trinidad Green at all. But I was more so pointing out like his fit in an offense isn't like, you've got to find special ways to have a tight end on the field that's not really a tight end. That was more so my main point. But yeah, no, I'm glad you pointed it out, Nick. And pass interference flags should be a bigger part of the conversation. So take Chris Hilton, for instance, who's not had a lot of catches. Well, he's drawn some PIs. Let's go to Steve. He says he has LSU on the money line. Was Caden Durham on the injury report? They just now come out on Wednesdays. He is questionable on the injury report. No bueno. Gabriel Relaford is out. Trinidad Green will play. Brian Kelly has already said that. It's posted on the SEC website. I just pulled this off Twitter, though. Every Wednesday at 6:10, it's reported. Now, here's the thing with Ole Miss's injury report. Austin Simmons is not on there, so he is available. So there you go. I don't know why that started playing. Let's see here. Steen's favorite to win the Cy Young. That would be great for LSU. It's a good question because I'm really high on Auburn this year. What do I think about them being out of the AP top 25, losing on the road? Yeah, I think they're one of the 25 best teams in America. Where it gets weird though is, do you put one-loss Auburn in there over Mississippi State, who was outside of the AP top 25? It's weird. It's a weird thing. Oh, and a game where OU cheated. Oh, man. Cheated. I don't know if they cheated. So there you go. Now, Nick, if you don't mind, send me an email, powerhourlsu@gmail.com. I want to send a message to you for saying thank you for joining our membership program. Let me see if there is this was interesting. I saw Chris Marler, friend of the channel, tweet this out. U.S. college rankings. LSU tied for 169th with Alabama and Ole Miss. I'm not shocked Florida is that high. They've always been academically viewed pretty highly. I'm shocked Texas isn't higher. It's such a tough school to get into. This is done by USA Today every year. And the way the U.S. News does this. So I listened to a podcast on this from the great Malcolm Gladwell. I'm a big Malcolm Gladwell fan. I might lose some subs for that because he has obviously done a bunch of like controversial stuff, but he does push my thoughts, and I feel like he's an overall fair journalist or podcaster. And if you wanted to know how the U.S. News ranks these colleges, you could see how flawed. I think it's nearly impossible to rank colleges. I do. Because it depends on what you want. Yeah, Gunnar, it's kind of weird. Yeah, the Illinois ranking was strange. It was really strange. But there you go. All right, y'all. We will be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Once again, my apologies. I don't know what happened with our guest tonight. I really have no idea. Don't forget, please support our partners. Learn about fortifying your roof with fortifiedgolf.com. If you're in the Lafayette region and you need physical therapy done, 5 different locations with our friends at Labor Therapy. Zion Imaging, Fast Draft. We appreciate them so much. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! Tonight, we are doing some grilled fish. Let's go.